The film begins by showing Kingston's mayor, Mike. At that time, he's taking Iris on a boat ride to get on a fancy cruise ship. He's the one who brought Iris along, because she's got some important info about those murders done by the psychopath. Back in the day, there was a big prison riot that was super tragic, and it messed up the warden, Karim. He went through some tough stuff. The riot left lots of prisoners alive but homeless, so they set up tents and guards keep a super close watch. But even though they're out of the prison, gangs keep on fighting. Carney, one of the warden's officers, just stood by and watched the prisoners fight it out. It's not just inside the prison cause outside, the gangs are fighting too. And they've got guns and drugs making it all worse. So this SWAT team led by Robert, they busted a place where drugs were being made. And not long after, Detective Ian and his partner, Stevie, asked Mike to check out the gang war spot. Ian told Mike that Robert and his team did a surprise attack because someone from the Bloods gang called 911 and told them where to go. However, Mike's got a big job on his hands trying to bring back peace to Kingstown. But now he's got even more trouble because the drug factory that got raided belongs to Bunny. You know, Bunny's the leader of a black gang, and he and Mike used to be pals back in prison. Bunny's really mad at Mike because his factory got messed up by the cops. And speaking of family, Mike's mom, Miriam, she's gone back to the women's prison to teach history and be a mentor, helping the prisoners have a better life. And then there's Karim. He's been through some tough stuff, and he's asking for a doctor's note so he can go back to work and support his family. Soon after, Mike goes to this cell phone shop that Bunny's been using as his base. Turns out, Bunny figures out that the person who told the cops about the factory was actually a Bloods gang member. They start talking about this big fight that happened in prison, where lots of folks died, including the guy who brought peace to the place, Daryl. Bunny says it's tough for him to pick a new leader cause all the options are kinda inexperienced. Bunny's worried that his crew might start going after the police, and he admits that his gang structure is all messed up cause the prison guards have been killing his people. That's making it hard for Bunny to move his stuff in and out of the prison. There, Bunny talks about how lots of prisoners got hurt, and Mike brings up how many guards got killed or hurt too. Bunny spills the beans that his beef with the Bloods is cause they're fighting over territory. Meanwhile, Carney hung out with friends at a cafe and spilled the beans about the prison chaos. Turns out tons of prisoners were causing a ruckus, running around like crazy and acting all weird. At that time, Carney compared them to zombies or really excited worms. He also talked about how the Mexican group was flexing their muscles, trying to take control of the prison. This happened because the white gang lost their leader, Luke, both outside and inside the prison. And then there was this fight between the Bloods and Creeds, Bunny's gang, because they were fighting for turf. Soon after, Mike showed up and talked to his buddies, telling them that Creeds should be in charge. He said Bunny was the only one with the smarts and the big picture to bring peace to Kingstown. Mike said that even though things were messed up, having a power structure among the prisoners was still important. Without it, things would be way worse, with gangsters shooting at every police car that drove by. But surprise, surprise, he was shocked when Ian told him that Milo had disappeared. Nobody knew if this dangerous criminal was dead or had managed to escape. Back at the prison, Karim and his crew rounded up 3 tied-up prisoners with bags over their heads. He was getting his revenge on the folks who had hurt him during the riots. While all that was happening, Mike crossed paths with Evelyn, the deputy district attorney. She was going through a list of all the prisoners who had died. When she talked about the 200 people who didn't make it through the riot, Mike's mind was on Milo, the super dangerous criminal. He was worried about what happened to him. Back on the cruise ship, Mike took Iris aside to meet 2 FBI agents. They were going to give Iris a new identity and a safe place to live. But she felt sad and let down because she actually wanted to stay with Mike. And then Miriam was leaving a store when she got attacked by a young guy trying to rob her. On the other hand, Mike's younger brother Kyle, he's joined the Marine Police. He and his buddy John were in action, trying to stop a ship that they thought was smuggling drugs. Kyle had his weapon ready, looking all focused. But it turned out John stopped the ship because they hadn't paid some taxes. Kyle decided to take a break and have a smoke, and he was starting to feel like this job wasn't really his thing. While all this was going on, Ian and Stevie showed up to help Miriam deal with the young robber and give him a taste of his own medicine. But Miriam didn't agree with them. She told them to back off and let her handle it her own way. On the other side, Iris was feeling like Mike had just used her to catch Milo. In the end, she decided to leave because she didn't think the previous 3 FBI agents could protect her from Milo. At the same time, Mike never expected Iris to come back to him, and when she did, she wanted to know if Milo had really managed to escape. After a while, another gang member got killed in prison, which set off a big fight outside the prison. Mike was in a tight spot because he didn't have anywhere else to put Iris, so he took her to his place. However, Kyle wasn't too happy about it, and they ended up arguing. When things got heated between them, Miriam stepped in and allowed Iris to stay in an empty room. Soon after, Mike got a tip about a gang fight happening. He rushed to the scene and found a bunch of people hurt because of the gang war. Behind a house, they spotted an AK-47 that seemed to be from the Mexicans. They followed some bloodstains and managed to find a surviving gang member. When Mike asked if he was with the Mexicans, the guy didn't try to hide it, but he admitted they were fighting on their own without any orders. Next morning, Mike met up with Bunny to talk about the ongoing war. At that time, Bunny promised he'd rein in his guys as a favor to their friendship. But his condition was that they had to fix the mess in the prison so the warden wouldn't act crazy. Mike thought for a bit and came up with an idea to fix the prison issue, even though he knew it wouldn't be easy. Mike told Bunny to meet him in a location in 3 hours, just the 2 of them without their crews. He also shared the plan with Evelyn. It turned out Mike was thinking of putting the 4 gang leaders from the city of Kingstown into a temporary prison to sort things out. He knew 2 of the bosses were on parole, 1 wasn't, and he didn't know about the last one's charges. Then Evelyn explained that the charge they were dealing with was about having a gun, which could mean 10 years in jail. But she mentioned that she might drop the charges if needed. Shortly after, Mike shared his plan to gather them in prison and choose a new leader. He needed their agreement and asked Karim, the head warden, and his deputy Carney to join too. They had to do this idea before the 4 gang groups in the city caused even more trouble. At the meeting spot, Robert was already there with his team guarding the place. Soon, one of the gang leaders who arrived got checked for weapons. Turns out Bunny was there too, and he got into a heated argument with Karim and Carney. Next, there was a bald, tattooed guy named Casper, who said he was from Grand Rapids. He mentioned having a lot of loyal followers in prison. Then there were the Mexican gangsters and the Bloods joining forces because they were allies. Soon after, Evelyn and the SWAT team showed up to arrest them for having guns. Mike made a deal with them that if they agreed to work things out in prison, the charges would be dropped. Hearing that, Bunny wasn't into it at first, but Mike stressed that this was the only way to end the conflicts and fights. When Mike got back home, he couldn't find Iris and started thinking she might have run away again. While all this was happening, Kyle and John were patrolling. They pulled over a car towing a boat just because it was going too slow. But when John walked up, the driver shot him. Soon after, Kyle fired back and ended up killing the 2 guys in the car. Shockingly, they found a baby in the car too. Later that evening, Iris went into a church and discovered a hidden room that turned out to be where Milo was hiding. She felt defeated and went back to the life of a criminal. Long story short, the 4 toughest gang leaders, known as the Demons of Kingstown, got put in a temporary prison. At the same time, Iris sat down with Milo and explained how she'd been working at the Lansing Hotel all this time. She believed Milo had died during the riot, and she confessed that she didn't really care about Mike. Meanwhile, the special forces led by Ian and Stevie raided a house, only to find out it belonged to Bunny's grandmother. Around that time, an FBI agent came to see Mike, concerned because Iris had vanished. The agent reminded Mike about his role as an FBI informant. Mike pointed out that if the FBI forced Iris to testify, Milo would probably kill her. That would mean losing their key witness in the case. Later on, Mike met up with Ian and Stevie, feeling disappointed in the 2 detectives for invading Bunny's family home, even though this move could mess up the peace process Mike was working on. At that time, Stevie tried to explain he'd received info about drug activity there. They ended up arguing about it. On the other side, Bunny wasn't comfortable in a prison tent. His assistant, Raph, told him that Mike wanted to see him. Soon after, Bunny asked Mike to speed things up. Mike said he was on it, waiting for info from the assistant attorney. Then, Bunny mentioned his cousin would take charge of his guys in prison once he was out. At that time, Mike hoped Bunny could fix his issues with the other groups soon so they could get released. Before leaving, Mike reminded Carney about tomorrow at 5 p.m. Meanwhile, Kyle got in trouble for the shooting incident he was involved in. He felt like he had some extra time on his hands, so he dropped by to see his fellow detectives. He hoped he could rejoin the unit soon. Shortly after, he talked to Mike and asked if he could have a job during his punishment for the next few months. Then Mike had an idea that he suggested Kyle look for Iris, who might have left Kingstown. But he also had a suspicion that Iris might have gone back to Milo. So he went to a bar and brothel run by Josep, a guy who'd been with Milo for a long time. Turned out, Josep didn't know if Milo had taken off. While Mike was there, he heard a baby crying, supposedly born to a prostitute. At that time, Josep seemed like he wanted to hurt the baby, but Mike stepped in and fought Josep and his crew. Then Mike let the woman and her baby go. After that, Mike pressed Evelyn to give a definite date for when the gang leaders, especially Bunny, would be released. On the flip side, it turned out Josep was still loyal to Milo, and Iris was actually at Josep's brothel, getting ready to be a prostitute again. After a while, Mike and Evelyn visited a private prison owned by the Warwick Group. The Warwick officers emphasized that their prison was violence-free. They mentioned that Kingstown Jail would be repaired and updated within 3 years after the riots. Then all prisons in the city would be contracted by the Warwick Group. But Mike didn't agree with this and thought the Warwick officers were like tourists on a safari. Meanwhile, the brothel manager, Toddy, talked to a frustrated Iris. So, Toddy met with Mike to let him know where Iris was. He also went to a nightclub to find Iris. Suddenly, Josep's men surprised him from behind, but Mike quickly turned the tables on Josep and threatened him. Then he vowed to settle things with Josep and his guys. Back at the prison, Bunny signaled Carney and his crew into action. At that time, Bunny looked at the Grand Rapids leader, Casper, and the Mexican gang leader, who went after their targets. He even tried to make a deal with the Bloods leader, but he refused, leading to a brawl. Bunny caught the attention of the Bloods leader as things got heated. After some time, Mike went back to the prison to meet Bunny. At that time, Bunny was eager for Mike to get him out right away, especially after he learned the police had raided his family's home. He even made threats, but Mike told him to stay patient. Before leaving, Mike asked Carney to watch over Bunny. The next day, at a construction site, a guy named Thuram, who drove heavy vehicles, found a locked iron box while digging a canal. Instead of reporting it, he decided to keep it a secret, hoping it might be some treasure. On the other hand, Bunny, who was battered, received information that all prisoners would be transferred to 5 prisons spread across the city. At that time, Mike had promised to release him soon, but after hearing all of the news, he borrowed Carney's phone to call Mike. Then Mike assured Bunny that he wouldn't be moved to another prison. Later, Mike went to see Evelyn to get an explanation. She mentioned that this was happening because of a death in the prison, which put pressure on her from the Justice Department. They even threatened the SWAT team. But now Evelyn felt powerless, since releasing the top gangsters was the chief prosecutor's and the judge's call. Mike, however, didn't care about those officials. He just wanted Evelyn to find a way to free Bunny. He warned her that things could get worse in the city if this situation escalated. The next day, Kyle was seen pouring out his troubles in front of his older brother Mitch's grave. Later, he met up with Mike and asked for a job. He also wanted something to do, apart from looking for Iris, to ease his thoughts and stress. Meanwhile, Thuram, who was working on the project, took the iron box to his house. After checking with his wife, they found out the box held bonds or valuable securities worth $5,000 per share. When they counted all the papers inside, it could be worth millions of dollars. They realized that the letter was valuable, like money, even though it didn't technically exist anymore and was often used in criminal activities. Thuram planned to sell it on the black market, even if it meant a lower price, to become a millionaire. Back at the prison, Casper went to see Bunny and felt that Mike had tricked and messed with them since they were still stuck in prison. So he asked Bunny to take action against Mike. Meanwhile, in the evening, Mike returned to the prison and Bunny was irritated. Then, Bunny told Mike that his guys were being transferred every day to other prisons. However, Mike assured Bunny he had pressured the district attorney and the judge. Bunny stressed that no matter the obstacles, he had to get out soon, especially since several parties were after Mike. This time, Mike got Karim's help to make sure Bunny wouldn't be moved. Karim hesitated at first, but Mike warned about worse consequences than the previous riot. On another note, Thorum attempted to sell a bond sheet at a shop. Sadly, even though he was selling it at a low price, the shop owner couldn't accept it due to its illegal nature. However, the owner suggested someone who might be willing to take it. Meanwhile, Miriam was providing counseling at a women's prison, this time visiting a juvenile boys' facility. She did this to contribute to positive change in Kingstown, even on a personal level. Using her approach, the prisoners started opening up about their life stories. Unexpectedly, the shop owner advised Thorum to meet Josep. Unfortunately, Thorum didn't receive any money and instead, he was brutally beaten. His finger was even cut off in an attempt to force him to reveal the location of the letter. Worried for her husband, Thorum's wife decided to take the securities to the police station. Later on, Bunny called Mike urgently to the prison. While on his way there, Stevie asked Mike to come to the police station as well because he had important news. There, Mike decided to head to the police station first. Stevie then informed Mike about the bonds that Thorum's wife had brought in. Stevie wanted to keep this from the chief of police, but Mike advised him to hide the valuable letter and told the woman to go home and wait for her husband. If Thorum didn't return, then she should leave Kingstown. At that time, Mike had figured out that the bonds were Milo's. When he arrived at the prison, he was in for a shock cause the place was completely empty. Not a single prisoner remained. There, he had no clue where Bunny and the hundreds of inmates had been moved to. To his surprise, Thorum was discovered dead in a swimming pool. The next day, lots of families of detainees came to the mayor's office, seeking answers about where their loved ones had been moved. Soon after, a woman named Rhonda, who said she was Bunny's cousin, also met up with Mike. At that time, Mike promised to let Bunny know his prison location. Rhonda didn't need to threaten because Mike already grasped Bunny's significance in the Creed's gang. Turns out, Bunny was held in an undisclosed cell. The prison's atmosphere grew tense due to a prisoner's death. Shortly after, Mike contacted Carney, but Carney didn't know where Bunny was amidst the huge prison and its isolation measures. Regardless, Mike pressed to find out the whereabouts of the gangster leaders. Carney, stationed atop a wall, spotted the one-eyed leader of the Bloods and Casper. On another front, Thorum's wife, while packing, was apprehended by Josep and his men after an escape attempt. Meanwhile, Mike discussed the bonds with his detective buddies. He believed Milo purposely escaped, as these bonds were worth a hefty $14 million. He was convinced Milo was still in town. However, Kyle disagreed with Mike on dealing with Milo. Kyle proposed letting Milo go with the money and focusing on freeing Bunny. But Mike couldn't allow that as Milo had ruined something. What exactly Milo did was unclear, but it had become more crucial to Mike than even the prison riot. In the end, Bunny was granted permission to step onto the field. His first greeting was for a person named Big Hush. Bunny then asked about his crew's whereabouts. Big Hush answered that they were all part of his crew. Soon after, Bunny inquired about Raph's location. Big Hush directed him to the gym, where Bunny found Raph. There, Bunny learned that the white group had bribed numerous wardens to join forces with them. Unexpectedly, a prisoner collapsed on the field. Carney quickly sent a medical team as he noticed Bunny's presence. On another note, Kyle received uplifting news from his supervisor that he could return to duty the next day. After the investigation team reviewed the camera footage from Kyle's car, he was proven innocent. Sometime later, Mike witnessed the police removing Thorum's wife's body. Stevie and Ian believed the bonds they had hidden in the police station were safe, but Mike had doubts. Thorum's wife had been hanged during daylight, and curiously, no one wanted to be a witness. Hence, Mike arranged a meeting to relocate the letter to a much more secure spot. On another note, Karim meets with high-ranking gangsters in a room inside the prison. He warns them to maintain peace as he knows their release dates. However, the Mexican gang leader gets angry and disregards Mike's advice, insisting on acting as usual. At that time, Bunny gazes intently at the man. Meanwhile, Mike visits Rhonda's salon to ensure that Bunny's cousin is okay. Soon after, he leaves his business card with Rhonda before heading home. Back at the prison, Carney informs Karim that the prisoner who fainted earlier is in a worsening condition and in a coma. Surprisingly, that prisoner is one of the 3 Karim had beaten while concealing his face. An investigation could jeopardize Karim's career and life. On the other hand, Yosep is summoned to meet a disappointed Milo, who scolds Yosep for failing to handle Thorum and his wife. At that time, Yosep seems afraid of Milo. Meanwhile, at the prison, Karim covertly passes his cell phone to Bunny so he can talk to Mike. Mike also speaks with Rhonda, who visits his office. Once again, he asks for patience from Bunny, but Bunny remains disheartened by Mike's repeated promises. On the other hand, an unknown person infiltrates the police station to steal the bonds. The next day, Mike was frustrated after Stevie informed him about the missing bonds. Meanwhile, Ian talked to an inmate named Charlie, mentioning that Ohio police would visit to discuss Charlie's confession caused the intention of his actions wasn't clear. At the same time, Karim went to the hospital to check on the prisoner he had previously confronted. Meanwhile, Mike visited the prison to meet Bunny. However, he was greatly disappointed and didn't want to hear any more of Mike's promises to be patient and avoid impulsive actions. Soon after, prison guards forcibly took Bunny from Carney's custody and placed him in solitary confinement. Carney promptly informed Mike, who tried to contact Karim, the prison head, but couldn't reach him. After a while, Big Hush and one of his associates burned the top Mexican gang leader alive. After a while, Mike arranged a meeting with Samantha, the CEO of the Warwick Group, which manages a private prison. He aimed to strike a deal to release certain prisoners with her assistance, hoping to secure the signature of the chief prosecutor for their release. On a different note, Big Hush and Raph found themselves handcuffed to a table in the dining room. Meanwhile, Bunny was placed in solitary confinement due to the actions of Ab, the leader of a bald-headed white gang. Unexpectedly, another bald-headed inmate managed to free his handcuffs and attacked Big Hush and the others. Sadly, one of Big Hush's partners lost his life in the incident. Soon after, Karim reached out to Mike regarding the death of the roasted Mexican leader. There, Mike clarified that it wasn't Bunny's doing, but rather Abby's. He requested Karim to transfer Bunny to a public cell, but Karim revealed that he was temporarily assigned and handling paperwork only for a few days. Shortly after, Mike gathered with Robert at a cafe to discuss some troubling developments. Robert shared that he had received a threatening letter from the district attorney, putting his current job in jeopardy due to his involvement in the prison riot. At that time, Mike suspected there might be insiders leaking information or conspirators working with the district attorney to dismantle them step by step. He then assigned Rebecca to track down the address of a warden named Davidson from the Anchor Bay prison. In the meantime, Kyle secretly stole the bonds from the police station and handed them over to Mike. Later on, Mike went to Davidson's house. At first, he politely warned Davidson not to bother Bunny. However, Davidson got aggressive and pushed Mike. Kyle swiftly intervened and fought Davidson. Mike demanded that Davidson transfer Bunny to a regular cell or face the consequences. The following morning, Carney took Bunny to the prison dog kennel, where Mike was waiting. Mike knew about Bunny's involvement in burning the Mexican leader. He implored Bunny to control his anger and be patient, explaining that he was tackling problems from various angles. Despite Mike's plea, Bunny's anger got the best of him. Meanwhile, a young prisoner named Jacob sought Miriam's help. He revealed he was about to turn 18 and would be moved to an adult prison. If he behaved well for a year, he could get a reduced sentence. But if he messed up, his sentence could increase to 8 years. However, the problem is a group of white people led by Woods is forcing Jacob to join them. His safety is at risk if he refuses. However, Jacob wants his freedom soon, so he asks Miriam to inform Mike. He really needs Mike's help this time. Meanwhile, Mike is meeting the district attorney, who's having lunch with Evelyn. At first, the district attorney refuses to consider Mike's request to release the gang leaders. However, after he mentions Milo's escape, the district attorney becomes interested in his plan to frame Milo. At the same time, Carney is dealing with some paperwork issues, trying to save himself and Kareem from investigation. There, Carney explains that the young man who was in a coma has passed away. This news shocks Kareem and makes him feel guilty, so he hesitates to sign the document. On another note, Abby visits Bunny, not with ill intentions. He informs Bunny that the attacks on Big Hutch and Raph weren't authorized and the attacker acted alone. Ab expresses interest in working with Bunny to expedite his release. As proof of his sincerity, he punishes his men for the attacks right in front of Bunny. Soon after, Bunny contacts Mike again, urgently requesting to be taken out of there as things are spiraling out of control. Unexpectedly, the district attorney is shot and killed by an unknown person. The following day, prisoners received drug packages from a drone. At that time, Davidson and other bribed wardens turned a blind eye to their actions. Soon after, the packages were taken to the kitchen to be divided into smaller portions for distribution. Mike returned to the prison dog kennel to talk to Bunny. There, Bunny explained that he had dealt with the obstacles to his own release, but Mike thought his plan might be even tougher. As they talked, a drone continued circling above the prison. This gave Mike an idea. He asked Carney if he had a connection with the warden allied with Ab. Then, on his way home, Mike sprang into action when he witnessed white and black gangsters fighting over territory. Meanwhile, Kyle's leader informed him that he would be called in by the provost, just like what happened to Robert. Both of them were being made scapegoats by the authorities for the prison riots. Soon after, Bunny and Raph are taken to a room after their cells were emptied. Surprisingly, the leaders of the Creeps gang now have better facilities in prison. Then, after the death of the chief district attorney, Mike meets with Evelyn. He tells her that the peace in Kingstown is now his responsibility. Later, Mike goes to a bar to meet with Robert and Kyle. There, Robert reveals that the person who reported them is named Ben. Mike asks them not to act hastily, as he plans to meet with Ben. In the meantime, Ian returned to the prison to meet Charlie and informed him that he had located the bodies in all the places Charlie had mentioned. This revealed that Charlie was a serial killer. Back at the prison, Bunny and Raph were cooking when Bunny noticed another drone that Mike was supposed to take care of. At the same time, Mike was taking action to catch the person controlling the drone. Interestingly, Ab contacted the drone controller. Mike then warned Ab to revert to the old ways of making money to maintain the gangster group's mutual respect. On another note, Kyle, who was at the bar, unexpectedly spotted Iris. He immediately contacted Mike. The following day, Rebecca couldn't find Mike in her office. Surprisingly, Mike was enjoying some leisure time at a bar. He had been busy meeting various people to solve issues in Kingstown. There, he left his car keys and gun with the bartender, wanting a day of rest and to distance himself from everything. Back at the prison, Bunny gifted Raph an instrument to celebrate his newfound freedom, thanks to Mike's efforts. At that time, Bunny entrusted the leadership of the Creeps gang inside the prison to Raph. Meanwhile, Kyle and Miriam struggled to reach Mike, even though Miriam desperately needed his help to rescue Jacob. Kyle also wanted to inform Mike about finding Iris. Meanwhile, Charlie followed Ian's instructions and ate rocks to make his teeth bleed. Eventually, Bunny, the gang leader, was released from prison and wasted no time in throwing a celebratory party at his headquarters. At that time, he faced challenges reaching Mike. Sometime later, Kyle was determined to meet Bunny at his base. After confirming he had no weapons, he was taken to the building's rooftop. On the other hand, Charlie needed to see a dentist, and Ian arranged to pick him up. Kyle then expressed his concern to Bunny about the Bloods gang potentially targeting Mike. At that time, Bunny promised to contact his informant for information on Mike's location. Before the dentist appointment, Ian instructed Charlie to visit Ben's house. There, Ian handed Charlie the criminal records involving Ben, which included 17 murders, burglary, kidnapping, and mutilation. Soon after, Ian took Charlie to Ben's house to intimidate him into retracting his testimony. At that moment, Ian managed to persuade Ben that Robert had acted to save lives during the prison riot. Feeling threatened, Ben contacted the district attorney to withdraw his testimony. On the other hand, while Mike was relieving his exhaustion by wandering the city in a drunken state, Ian and Charlie had already left Ben's house. However, Ben insulted and taunted Ian for bringing someone as dangerous as Charlie. In an emotional outburst, Charlie couldn't control himself and swiftly killed Ben. Quickly, Ian manipulated the scene to make it look like a robbery and murder. Meanwhile, Josip arrived with Tati and Iris to deliver money to Milo. The next day, Miriam went to the juvenile prison and learned that Jacob had been transferred to the adult prison a day early. On another note, Mike visited a bar where he met a widow whose husband had been a victim of the prison riot. After Ben's death, Ian initially contemplated killing Charlie, but he changed his mind out of sympathy. In the evening, Kyle received a message from Bunny, indicating that the situation was calm and no gang was planning to target Mike. At that time, Stevie suggested Kyle check the hospital for Mike. Shortly after, Ian arrived and assured them that both he and Robert were safe. However, Ian kept the earlier incident with Charlie hidden from them. Surprisingly, Mike spent the night at the widow's house and became intimate with her. Upon leaving, he noticed a car following him. Meanwhile, Ian and Kyle waited in Mike's office, only to find that his phone was locked in a drawer. Soon after, Mike hurried back to the bar to retrieve his gun from the bartender. As he left, the car attempted to ram him, but he managed to take out the driver. To his surprise, the driver turned out to be Davidson. As Mike caught his breath, Milo suddenly appeared before him. There, Milo proposed a deal to exchange Iris for the bonds. He knew that the police had the letter. He pledged to vanish from the city after obtaining the $14 million worth of securities. However, if Mike betrayed him, Milo threatened to kill Mike and those close to him. Meanwhile, Bunny went to a gun shop to check out an $800 gun. He intended to consult his wife before making a decision. Suddenly, his car crashed through the shop's wall. He and his crew swiftly robbed the shop of various weapons, damaging CCTV cameras and taking the owner's hard drive to erase evidence. Back at his office, Mike's return relieved Kyle. Mike recounted his meeting with Milo and the deal to hand over the bonds for Iris. Kyle shared that he had spotted Iris at a club while searching for Milo. At that time, Mike was angered by Kyle's reckless actions. While redeeming Iris came at a high cost, their primary goal was to ensure her safety by keeping her away from Milo. Soon after, Mike contacted Miriam while on his way to meet Bunny. There, Miriam asked for his help to move Jacob from Anchor Bay Prison. Mike then reached out to Karim to ensure Jacob's safety in a secure cell while they find a suitable prison for him. Later, Ian called Mike to the gun shop. Upon arrival, Ian informed Mike that the shop owner accused Bunny of the incident. There, Ian threatened to go after Bunny, sensing a big confrontation brewing. He also shared that the issue with Robert and Kyle had been resolved as Ben withdrew his report, backed by the district attorney's decision. Soon after, Mike, appreciating the update, met with Evelyn, who was now the chief prosecutor, to express gratitude. Evelyn, however, was irritated by Bunny's release and knew that the key witness against Robert was now deceased. Then, arriving at Bunny's headquarters, Mike spotted a drone. Bunny, not wanting to be overshadowed by Ab's group smuggling drugs via drones, expressed gratitude for Mike's promise of freedom. Unexpectedly, Bunny revealed a grand plan involving stolen weaponry. He intended to attack SWAT members in retaliation for his group's losses during the riots. Mike urged Bunny to let go of that dark chapter, but Bunny remained determined, ready to face any consequences for his territory. On the other hand, as soon as Jacob entered the adult prison, he felt overwhelmed. Fearing victimization, he tragically chose to end his life by smashing his head into a truck tire. Meanwhile, the string of issues plaguing Kyle led his wife to seek solace at her parents' home. Shortly thereafter, Kyle informed Mike about Jacob's death. Soon after, Mike promptly met with Miriam and shared the news. The weight of guilt and disappointment settled on her, feeling that they had failed to save Jacob in time. Then, upon returning to his office, Mike received a call from Iris, requesting a meeting in the park at noon the next day. He suspected it was a message from Milo, as they had agreed before. The following morning, Ian urged Mike to persuade Bunny to surrender his weapons to avoid a confrontation with the entire police force and the National Guard. Soon after, Robert appeared, and Mike wasted no time asking if Robert had killed Ben to protect his position. At that time, Robert, feeling unjustly accused, left in offense, unaware that Charlie was the true culprit, manipulated by Ian. Mike then tried to convince Bunny to give up his weapons, but Bunny adamantly refused. Concerned for Robert's safety, Mike attempted to reach him, but Robert's phone was off. Meanwhile, Josep sought out Iris and attempted to rent her for 3 hours. There, she resisted fiercely, eventually killing him in self-defense. While all this was happening, Mike quickly mobilized his friends to search for Robert. Eventually, that night, Robert finally answered his phone, but just then, a group of gangsters emerged to attack him. Soon after, Mike rushed to the scene, only to find Robert severely wounded. Not long after, Mike and his police friends gathered at the hospital, deeply concerned about Robert's critical condition. As the clock ticked past midnight, Mike suddenly realized he was supposed to meet Milo. However, his journey was halted by a set of railroad tracks. Out of nowhere, the gangster's car pulled up, and they began shooting at Mike. Despite the surprise attack, he fought back valiantly, taking them down one by one. By recognizing their tattoos, he deduced that they were from Ab's group. He suspected this attack was in retaliation for his actions against Davidson and his ban on Ab's drone usage. Soon after, Mike commandeered the assailant's car. Unfortunately, his watch revealed that it was past 12, indicating he had missed his scheduled meeting with Milo. Meanwhile, Miriam was in for a shock when Iris suddenly appeared behind her house. Shortly after, Mike reached out to Karim for help after nearly being killed by Ab's gang members. Then he got in touch with Ian to clean up the aftermath of the attack. Fueled by anger, Mike confronted Bunny about Robert's deteriorating state. Despite considering each other as brothers, he wouldn't stand by if Robert died, and Bunny's earlier promise to not hold back if Mike interfered was on his mind. Yet, Mike's troubles escalated as Milo had already reached Miriam's house. There, Mike assured Milo he'd arrive soon with the bonds. Before leaving, he contacted Kyle, seeking help to protect their mother's life that was now under threat. Soon after, Kyle and Ian joined in, but Mike forgot the bonds were in his car. Inside his house, he realized the situation, but Milo was collecting the bonds too. To save Miriam from Milo's grip, Mike disclosed the letter's location, that it was in his car. Meanwhile, Kyle took down Milo's guards stationed outside. The ambush caught Milo off guard, and some of his men fell under Mike's swift action. As Mike rescued his mother, Milo fled with Iris. After eliminating all threats, a stray bullet from Kyle's gun hit Miriam through the wall. At that moment, Miriam's condition was dire, but she survived the ordeal. Soon after, Mike tried to console Kyle, who was deeply remorseful about their mother's situation. With Ian's help, Mike aimed to solve this issue once and for all. Soon after, they headed to the club to persuade Tati to reach out to Milo. Milo agreed to grant Mike a final opportunity to deliver the bonds to the port. The deal was clear that if Mike returned with his allies, Iris would be spared. On the journey, Mike got in touch with Carney, who was guarding the prison. He instructed Carney to execute their plan that night. After surviving an attack by Ab's gang, Mike was resolute about reordering the city. He also made a stop at the attack site to retrieve the bonds Milo had stashed in his car's trunk. Meanwhile, alongside caring for his mother, Kyle reflected on Robert's situation. On the other hand, back at the prison, Carney was stationed in the control room for the cell doors. Meanwhile, Raph, Big Hush, and the one-eyed guy were getting ready for their plan, hiding magazines on their bodies. On the boat, Milo and Iris waited for Mike. There he pondered why Mike cared so much for Iris, enough to risk his life, even though they had never been romantically involved. Mike then asked Ian to position himself on a hill with a sniper rifle, ready to take down Milo and his men if things went wrong. At the same time, Raph and his crew entered the scene to take down Abby for daring to attack Mike. At the port, two of Milo's men thoroughly searched Mike while Ian was set with his sniper rifle. Soon after, Mike boarded the ship, handed over the bonds to Milo, and then exited with Iris. As Milo sped away with the ship and the money, an unexpected explosion occurred. Mike had planted explosives in the bag, eliminating him. At the same time, Ian's sniper shot hit Milo, Iris, and even Mike. And that's a wrap for Season 2 of the series Mayor of Kingstown, folks. The moral lesson from this film is, in the most chaotic situations, never forget to charge your phone. You never know when a call from a gangster or a criminal mastermind might come.